All right. Hopefully you can hear us this time around. We're going to try this again. We were on just a few minutes ago, and unfortunately there was no sound, but we are back, and hopefully we are back with sound again now. We are speaking with a real estate attorney this evening about evictions specifically, because we know that a lot of people have been dealing with evictions issues in the last several months, and we could see a lot more of that to come. And so I want to discuss this a little bit. We had talked about this earlier, Rachel, and we're looking at, there was a federal report that was put out in late September that said we could see as many as 20.1 million people evicted across the country by January unless something is done to provide more help. That is just a tremendous number when you think about it. And I wonder, what recourse do a lot of people have? I mean, right now the CDC has this eviction halt in place nationwide. Still, evictions have been occurring even with that halt. Are we going to see a flood of these, do you think, when we get to January, if that order is not extended?
Yes, we are anticipating, and by we, there's a lot of data out there that is saying that America and Texas also are expecting a 50% increase in eviction filings this year as opposed to same time last year. And Jason, I think it's important to know, so that anybody watching this too understands, that this is a process. In other words, if nothing happens and that eviction moratorium expires, the landlords still have to go through the proper channels in the court to be able to obtain an eviction order to evict you. None of this is going to happen overnight. And as you can imagine, given the fact that they're expecting such an influx of these eviction filings, for all of those to actually get through the courts, there's going to be a major backlog.
And just to be sure here too, because we know that there are a lot of supposed off the books evictions, the ones that we don't see in court filings, the one where perhaps somebody doesn't know what their rights are, and basically they're told to get out, or the locks are changed, and it happens that abruptly. We know that that happens as well. That is not the normal procedure. It is supposed to be through a court order that actually, you're given some notice, and then it's time to go. So very important for people to know that. And we've also seen some programs to help renters, and I say renters, but also to help landlords, because we have to remember throughout all of this, a lot of those landlords are suffering as well, because this was their income, and they were making income off of this, and now for months and months and months, in many cases, they are not.
That's exactly right. And that's what makes this problem even that much more complicated and layered, because until there is some relief in place for both landlords and tenants, it is a problem that is very difficult to solve.
Sandy Maltese is on here, and she's asking, what happens to people who are evicted as far as trying to go lease at a different property? Because, when you owe money and you've been evicted, now you have this sort of stain on your record. That is that's a real problem that a lot of people, you're sort of caught between that rock and a hard place, aren't you?
Yes, that's exactly right. Depending on the landlord, they will either report it on your credit, or just a judgment for an eviction certainly will appear under your name too, especially if a new apartment complex were to conduct a background check. To try and avoid that, I would recommend, if you know that you cannot bring your rent current and you know that your landlord's going to be proceeding with an eviction, perhaps try and talk to them and explain to them, look, I'll agree to leave. I'll agree to waive any appeals that I may have in exchange for your not filing for the eviction, or your not filing this of record. And sometimes that does help, because it will keep it out of that public record. But again, if you do that, get it in writing from your landlord.
So now, so let me ask this. If you do go to your landlord, what has your experience been here? Are most landlords willing or able, I should say, are they able? Because a lot of them, again, have been pushed to their own limits here by the COVID-19 economic impacts here. Are most of them that you have encountered, though, willing to try to set up some kind of arrangement with a tenant?
Well, that's an interesting question. The landlords that you would think would be more apt to working with you are the larger landlords. In other words, the landlords that own, the entities that own these large apartment complexes. You would think they would be more apt. What I'm finding is it's actually the smaller landlords that really do try and work with the tenants a lot more than do the larger ones. So it's ebbing and it flows. It also depends on the history with the tenant. If the tenant has been repeatedly late, even pre-COVID, it's tough. It's tough I've seen it with landlords who are not willing to work with their tenants. But now is the time to talk to your landlord, because your landlords know that backlog is going to be so massive that they're better off trying to work a deal with you right now than having to wait, months down the road before they actually do get the permission to proceed with displacing you.
We saw a program here in North Texas that was run by DHA, and they were saying that, basically they took applications from people who were in need of rental assistance. And again, this is one of those where it benefited the tenants and the landlords, because what they were doing is, based upon somebody's situation, they were able to help them pay their rent to the landlord who needs the income. They were able to help, I think it was 1,207 tenants, but they got 4 times that many applications. So that illustrates the need. And this is during what we are knowing as a halt on evictions across the country. So there's another program. It's the state running this one, and that's through the Supreme Court of Texas, working with a couple of other Texas agencies. And basically what they're doing is something very similar, but with a much bigger pot of money. Of course, they have to deal with a much bigger area, all of Texas as well. And they're going to try to help people with that rental assistance as well. The problem is we're only up to 19 counties right now. It's still just a pilot project. They just told me the other day that they're going to try to bring on 54 more counties by January 15th. But, you do the math there and you're still not even covering, a huge chunk of Texas. So relief, it appears, is kind of far off for people right now, isn't it, Rachel? Unless we see something come out of these negotiations right now for more COVID relief in D.C.
Absolutely. And even at that point, the average American right now, or renter, is behind about almost $5,700. So unless that stimulus check includes close to that amount, it is very difficult to come up with that kind of money right now. And so I'm just not sure what's going to happen. And I think the best case scenario on the tenant side is the courts are going to be so backlogged that it's just going to take a long time to get around to each of the cases. But that's worst case scenario for the landlords, which is why I just hope and I encourage every tenant to contact your landlord to try and see if there's something that you can work out if you've exhausted all of those other remedies.
And so there's this thing called the Eviction Lab that's at Princeton University, where they track different cities across the country just to sort of get a handle on what's going on with evictions. I know you're probably very well aware of this. And one of the cities that they track is Fort Worth. And basically they pick the cities, based upon, they're trying to get, a good cross section of the country. But at the same time, they're picking the cities where that information from the courts is easily retrievable. It's readily available. Some places are harder than others, like Dallas County might be a lot harder than Tarrant County is. And even just since March 15th, we have seen almost 9,000 evictions filed in Tarrant County alone, in Fort Worth, Tarrant County alone. Is that kind of put that number in perspective for us? You're closer to this than I am. Is that a tremendous number just from history?
That is a tremendous number. Usually you can expect, a 9,000 eviction number of filings, that is typical for, a year, maybe even 18 months. That is about the typical size. So this is enormous. And in Tarrant County alone, I believe in the last month or 6 weeks, with the moratorium still in place, they've already seen 375 new eviction filings just waiting in the queue for the moment that moratorium strikes. It's going to be dire. It's a tough situation for everyone involved.
Jennifer asks on here, if we are filed for eviction, how long does the process take in the courts? I guess we should ask that sort of, ballparkish. How long would it normally take, and how long, I guess, is it likely to take these days when we see perhaps a backlog?
So first and foremost, the landlord's required to send a 3-day notice to vacate. And I bring that up because most tenants, when they receive that letter, think that they have to move right then and there. And that's not what happens. A landlord's required to send that notice that says, if you do not leave in 3 days, I will file a lawsuit to evict you. Typically, pre-COVID, once you file the lawsuit, you can expect to get a trial date within roughly anywhere from 10 to 15 days, more or less. And then if you go to the eviction lawsuit, the judge rules against you and in the landlord's favor, then you have 5 days to appeal that judgment. And if you appeal it with the county court, it goes up to the county courts. And that can, even pre-COVID, that can sometimes take 3, 4, 5 months to get pushed through because the county courts are so backlogged pre-COVID. Now, current COVID, so in other words, from the beginning all the way until the end, pre-COVID, it could take 3, 4, 5 months if you appeal it.
Wow.
To be able to get through the process. And it is frustrating for landlords because there are tenants, of course, that abuse that process. But in pandemic, I'm not certain anyone's going to be abusing that process because people have lost their jobs. Current COVID, if you get served with an eviction lawsuit, I'd be surprised if your trial date was sooner than, I can't even guess. I would say, statutory, they're required to get those things set within a couple of weeks. I'd be surprised if it could happen within the month. I don't know. I just don't even know how long it's going to take in current COVID times. But if you appeal it at the county court level, it could take months upon months. Now, make sure you talk to an attorney or legal aid or somewhat, because there are certain requirements. Even if it takes 6, 7, 8, 9 months, the landlord could file a motion asking you to at least pay your rent into the registry of the court while that appeal is pending. Otherwise, your appeal goes away. And so there are a lot of laws to kind of keep in mind about that.
And something you should also keep in mind is, as you're going through this process, even if it does drag out and it does buy you time, it does not erase the debt that you're going to owe at the end. You're still going to owe rent for all of those months and any months that you may have already been in arrears.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct.
Someone was just saying on here a moment ago, that we're seeing this happen to so many people. What are they to do once they have, been evicted? They're behind on their rent. It's on their credit report. How much, are there any mechanisms for dealing with that? Because obviously you have to find another place to live, and that can be really difficult to do when you've got something on your record like that. I know that some of these credit reporting agencies are giving a little bit of grace right now during COVID. Is that something that you should seek? How critical is that if you start to see these blemishes on the credit report at such a time as now? Or are some of these landlords possibly expecting to see some struggle?
That is there is no good answer to that question. I think tenants are going to be running into problems when their credit is impacted. And I think it's interesting because, on the foreclosure side, there was a foreclosure relief that was under COVID. And specifically, the legislature stated, if you request a forbearance, the lender's not allowed to report that negatively on your credit for that exact reason. Because why are we going to kick someone while they're down? It's too bad that piece didn't come along with the eviction as well, if that makes sense. It's too bad that also was not a part of it, because I think not only are these tenants going to be struggling to get through the eviction, but that question's exactly right. Post eviction, I don't think a landlord is going to give any more leniency or not with someone new coming in to try and lease, because at the end of the day, they need to make sure they're paid and they're not going to get stuck in that situation again. It's just a terrible terrible situation.
Yeah, it's about the money too. When you get, right down to it, it is a business. Jennifer is asking, and I'm not quite sure exactly what she's talking about here, but she says there's a 21-day notice as well, isn't there right now due to COVID? Are you aware of anything that requires 21 days of notice as far as the eviction process goes?
Well, actually, it's a 60-day notice right now. That 3-day notice to vacate that I was talking to you about, included in the COVID restriction, I believe, and I don't want to misstate it, but if it's still current, but it was a 60-day notice to vacate, that landlords actually have to give tenants a 60-day notice in advance of filing those evictions.
I see. And also, people should know that we talk about all of these evictions that are still going forward right now, these eviction filings that are going forward, even though we're in the middle of this national halt on evictions that was issued by the CDC months ago. Some of the reason for that is that the CDC freeze only deals with evictions that are COVID related, like if you are having income troubles or you lost your job, that sort of thing. But then also what may be a really big component of this is you actually have to fill out a declaration form to get that protection from the CDC. This isn't something that just is automatic, or you can say after the fact, after you get that eviction notice that, oh, well, I'm having trouble because of COVID, so you can't evict me. This is something where you've got to fill out a form. And I just tweeted this out and put it on Facebook as well. I'm at Jason Wheeler TV on both of those platforms, and I actually have a link to that form if you're caught in that situation, because you got to do that extra step, Rachel, to let them know that I'm having trouble. It's because of COVID, and I need some protection here.
Absolutely, yes, that's exactly right. It is certainly not automatic.
And what other information, what other advice would you give somebody if they are, sort of caught in this, it's like a whirlpool. You're caught in this whirlpool. You're trying to, keep your head above water, but you know that it's going to get difficult. You know that you may start missing rent. Is it one of these things too, where, I don't know, do you think it helps your case in your experience to be able to go to your landlord and say, I can make partial payments right now until X month when I might be able to get back on my feet again and start paying you, back again?
Absolutely. The judges are going to look at anything that can help them let a tenant stay in possession of the property, and the landlord, it will look like it's in good faith. So that certainly is anything you can do that's going to show the landlord that you are trying and that you're in good faith trying to work with them is helpful.
Brittany is asking about what is forbearance, and that's kind of more of a separate topic, but very much related. And that's talking about homeowners who are having trouble making the mortgage right now. There are a lot of tools available to them as well to try to keep them in their homes and not sort of drowning under that payment that they can't make every month.
Absolutely, a forbearance is a request to your lender to postpone your payments. It doesn't mean they're going away, but they usually will put them at the end of the loan. If your mortgage is backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, one of the government-backed loans, which 80% of homeowners loans are. And in fact, lenders are required, if the borrower requests it, they are required to give that forbearance, and you are actually entitled to 360-day to 180-day forbearances on your payments.
So that can buy you quite a bit of time.
Yeah, it buys you quite a bit of time and again, it doesn't go away, and make sure anything that your lender tells you is put in writing so that you understand. But a forbearance does not relate to eviction, although I wish it would, because that would be something helpful also in this particular instance too.
Brittany also says on here, we were behind this month and we were given 3 days.
If you were given 3 days, I assume, is it before they filed the lawsuit, the notice?
Yeah, that's a curious one, because right after that, we had Jennifer come in and say that she just saw a 21-day notice that is required. So, we might still be getting either some old filings there, or, I mean, there is a chance, depending on who you're dealing with here, that maybe somebody is not following the letter of the law right now in these pandemic times. You just have to really be careful and maybe reach out to someone, huh?
Absolutely, because these laws are changing so much. Every week it seems that there are new regulations that are coming out, and a landlord, especially the smaller ones, it's hard for them to keep up with that too. So it absolutely is important to reach out to someone to see what your rights are, and to make sure that the landlord followed the law and followed the current requirements at the time.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, there's a group here in North Texas. It's called Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. They do a lot of work in this area, providing a lot of advice for tenants and renters who are having trouble and finding themselves in this situation. There are a couple of other resources as well. And again, it just so happens I just did a big article on this earlier this week. It should be at the top of my feeds right now. On Twitter and on Facebook. And again, in both places, I'm at Jason Wheeler TV. And I have links to those different resources that might be able to help you out because, Rachel, we're seeing a lot of people who are caught in this right now, and maybe for the first time, just because this is so unprecedented right now. A lot of these people might never have missed their rent payments before, and they haven't been through this system before, and they don't know what is correct and what is not correct as far as, what they're being told and what they have to do.
That's exactly right. And that's what makes this so tough too, is you're right. I mean, for the first time, several tenants are having trouble making their rent payments, and that is not an uncommon story that I've been hearing.
Mm-hmm. Well, we want to thank everybody for their questions here, and we hope that this has helped out, and we know that this will be turned into a video when this is all said and done. In case you want to go back and listen to some of the answers in there, maybe that will help out. And again, sorry for the audio difficulties in the beginning. I still don't know exactly what that was about, but these things happen sometimes. Again, Rachel Khirallah, who is a realtor here in North Texas, thanks for being with us and taking the time to answer all of these questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it too.
All right, bye-bye.